Hi there, this is Gregory Brennan with Virginia Clean Cities, and thank you so much for tuning in to the National Drive Clean Rural USA webinar on the Playbook overview. I wanted to make a quick note here. There's a QR code that is supposed to go directly to the Drive Clean Rural Playbook, and it is deactivated. So in order to access the Drive Clean Rural Playbook, please go directly to the TEP's website where you can find the webpage itself or email Stephen or myself directly for the link. Thank you so much and enjoy.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's national webinar on the Drive Clean Rural USA initiative. We're thrilled to welcome coalition leaders, industry partners, community advocates, and federal collaborators from across the country as we take a moment to reflect on this important effort and chart our course forward. I want to begin by offering gratitude to the U.S. Department of Energy for their vision, leadership, and continued investment in the future of clean transportation. It's because of their commitment to innovation that the Drive Clean Rural USA project was made possible. Their support laid the foundation for a truly collaborative, community-centered program that brings practical, sustainable solutions to rural America. If we can go to the, actually, no. Also want to extend a special thank you to the Clean Cities and Communities coalitions involved in this project. That represent 7 coalitions across 8 states. These coalitions are the engines of progress. Their tireless work in rural communities, your willingness to listen, to adapt, to build trust, and to innovate has been essential to the success of DCR USA. You did not simply implement this project, you shaped it, you enriched it, and you brought it to life. In addition, we're very, very grateful for the many industry partners who made this work possible. From vehicle and equipment providers to fuel suppliers and infrastructure experts, you've helped bridge critical gaps in access and capability. And by engaging directly with communities and coalitions, you've advanced the real-world deployment of alternative fuel vehicles and demonstrated scalable, replicable solutions. So as you see here, the headshots for the 4 of us who you'll be mostly hearing from: myself, Stephen Montoya, Transportation Energy Partners Executive Director, Greg Brennan, who you also see on screen, Virginia Clean Cities Program Coordinator, and really so much of the driving force behind the production and design of the Replication Playbook, and Frank Dean, Market Manager Green Fleet from Altec, and Joel. I apologize, Joel. I feel like I'm always mispronouncing your last name. So I'm maybe just going to skip over, and later when you present, if you can give your name its proper due. The Senior Manager of Autogas Business Development with PERC. So you'll hear from us, and then afterwards we'll have time for Q&A. So next slide, please. Yeah, goals for today: gain a clear understanding of the project, review the overall vision and purpose, learn from coalition experiences, outline next steps, and engage with partners. So with that in mind, I'd like to start with just a bit of context about DCRUA. TEP has led this national demonstration effort through a DOE-funded grant to engage deeply with rural communities, understanding their needs, addressing persistent barriers, and supporting a clean transportation transition. The initiative showcased over 21 alternative fuel demonstrations and involved over 100 public-private partnerships. And together, we've built more than just cleaner fleets. We've built a network of trust, knowledge, and momentum. And here you'll see the list of coalitions who were central to this work: Alabama Clean Fuels, Columbia Willamette Clean Cities, Clean Fuels Ohio, Wisconsin Clean Cities, Drive Clean Indiana, Virginia Clean Cities, and Utah Clean Cities. We can go to the next slide. Oh, great. So this project was grounded in 3 powerful goals. First, economic growth and viability. By demonstrating the cost savings of alternative fuels backed by data and real-world examples, we've helped fleet managers in rural areas make a compelling case to local decision makers. Whether it's propane-powered irrigation engines saving $10 an hour in fuel costs, or municipal EVs slashing maintenance expenses, the message is clear. Clean fuels aren't just better for the planet, they're better for the bottom line. And secondly, empowering rural communities. Too often, these communities are left out of the clean energy conversation. DCR USA aimed to change that by bridging resource gaps, providing technical assistance, and offering a practical, accessible playbook. We centered community voices from fleet managers and utility partners to school districts and farmers, and worked to ensure that clean transportation solutions fit their unique needs. And thirdly, environmental benefits. By cutting emissions and improving air quality, we are helping make rural communities healthier places to live and work. Cleaner air and quieter streets benefit everyone, especially our children, our elderly, and those already facing environmental health burdens. Today's agenda is about sharing what we've learned, the successes and the challenges, and looking ahead. You hear directly from coalition leads, technology providers, and community partners. We'll also walk through the DCR USA Playbook, which is a user-friendly resource designed to empower even more communities to take the next step. Thank you again for your partnership, your participation, and your passion. And let's keep moving rural America towards a cleaner, more resilient future. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg to walk you through the replication playbook.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephen. I appreciate it. So as Stephen said, my name is Gregory Brennan. I'm a program manager here at Virginia Clean Cities, and I had the pleasure of getting to dive through all the information from the Drive Clean Rural project and create the playbook. So when we were designing the playbook, we had a couple themes in mind and key objectives we wanted to keep on the table. So we want to develop a clear and user-friendly playbook experience from this project and experienced in real rural communities across the U.S. As we all know, each of our states have our own very unique rural communities, and they all require their just as unique set of solutions. Ensured accessibility for all, including those without industry experience, to empower informed decision making, meaning like some of the language that we can use is often insider language, things that we are aware of because we're in the clean transportation space or in the transportation space at all. And some of these communities in rural areas might not have that accessibility. Compiled resources and best practices to reduce those barriers and support rural communities in adopting alternative fuel solutions. So with this playbook, one of the last things is we were trying to create a resource guide, like a walkthrough or a play-by-play of how they could decarbonize or employ alternative fuels within their fleets. So continuing with the overview of the playbook, there's two different versions of it. Let's say essentially the same thing. One was for more of the coalitions and the supporting organization side, and the other was for the actual rural communities themselves. So the replication playbook on the left is a PDF version that gets more into some of the focus areas. It gets more in the nitty gritty of what works, what doesn't work, barriers, and how they were addressed. And then the web page, which is a part of the TEP website, is just a simple like checklist, a walkthrough checklist of resources of where the intended end user, the rural community, could employ these resources that we compiled over the course of the project. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the web page specifically and what it was designed for. So there were three intended end users. And so in reading through all of the data and information from all the rural communities from Washington State and Utah and Virginia and Wisconsin and Indiana and so on, and Ohio, what we saw were we had rural fleet managers, rural community leaders, and supporting organizations. Now, a fleet manager could be anyone from like someone that has a couple of golf carts at a golf course, or someone that runs a municipal fleet that has snow plows and heavy and light duty buses and all those things. And then a rural community leader, what we realize is someone that's like a champion for alternative fuels in their community. And this could be someone that is in that could be an elected official, someone that could be a volunteer at a local organization. A community leader could even be a rural fleet manager that cares a lot about alternative fuel use and seeing the total cost of ownership of their vehicles go down. And then lastly, supporting organizations. And so Clean Cities and Coalitions are obviously a supporting organization, but there are other forms of those, like so the OEMs, other forms of nonprofits in rural communities that want to partner with community leaders and rural fleets to see their cleaner future realized. So I'm going to break out a little bit more of why we picked those and what we can expect to see if you were to hand this to a rural community, hand this link to them. So key responsibilities that we identified were rural fleet managers oversee diverse fleets, from fire trucks to school buses, snowplows, golf carts, like I was saying. They ensure smooth operation in municipalities and businesses, and they optimize fuel choices, routes, and equipment maintenance. And something that we saw is that like some of these rural fleet managers really were interested, but didn't necessarily have the understanding to plan these routes. So on the web page, it starts with like telematics, keeping track of your vehicles. How many vehicles do you have? How old are they? How many miles do you drive? Et cetera, et cetera. And so we have a model for them to use, like an Excel spreadsheet that's free, as well as a website that gives them a quote for what telematics might cost for their site. So it goes from the very beginning of what it means to like understand your fleet to the very end of it, where it's telling them you can apply for this grant to help decarbonize your bus fleet or your light duty vehicles within your town. And so I just really think that they matter. I mean, what we saw is that the experts in their community and they understand the unique resources that they have. They play a critical role in keeping essential services running, and they drive innovation and efficiency in their towns, and in their rural communities. And so I think it's just important that like we engage with them as an equal, and keeping the language that we use as accessible as possible. And that's why I try to do that with the web page. Yeah, and so then a little bit about community leaders. I think these people are some of the hardest working and most passionate people in this, and that we've seen from all this data, is that they're advocates, they're educators, they're implementers of sustainable mobility solutions. I mean, from beginning to end, a lot of them drive alternative vehicles themselves, whether that be an e-bike or a biofuel car that they retrofitted themselves, or an EV, keep it classic. But what they do is they're able to establish trust in these communities in a way that you or I might not be able to, because we're not a part of that community. And like I said in the beginning, that every rural community is unique and has their own set of unique problems with a set of unique solutions. And so employing these community leaders and giving them the guide with this website it lets us get a lets the excuse me, sorry, it lets them understand where their community is and how they can utilize resources like a Clean Cities and Coalition or grants that are available or current tax credits, and informs the fleet managers and potentially supporting organizations in those communities. So lastly, but most certainly not least, are supporting organizations. Now, supporting organizations on the webpage, they are the smallest of the web page, but they're important because they assist in planning and promoting and implementing these clean transportation initiatives, but like not necessarily directly, sometimes indirectly. They can often provide funding, additional resources, technical expertise, advocacy, and education. And not only that, they can support stakeholders with directly operating transportation services. For example, we had a United Way, a nonprofit here in Virginia, that was interested in getting people to their doctor's appointments on time. And so they partnered with Clean Transportation, a rideshare program, to make sure they got there safely. And so supporting organizations could be an array of things, but they help bridge gaps in funding and logistics. They empower communities to adopt sustainable transportation, and even just like a rideshare. And they're able to drive collaboration on a long-term success scale, and maintain relationships. So I want to talk a little bit about a couple of successes that we highlighted in the playbook. And again, this is both the PDF version and the web page version. So the community engagement for Virginia, one of the things I wanted to highlight is we asked communities what they needed and spurred productive conversations in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And that you can see here is this center photo that's kind of hid behind the other two, where we had a propane F-150 that was on display. But this sparked a lot of conversation. We had 100+ partners involved at this event, and ultimately led to a Fredericksburg getting hybrid police cruisers, which is fantastic because police cruisers are idling 50% of the time. Then another one from Utah is I saw that someone was here from Danner, and I hope I'm saying that right. But you'll see that in the top right here, this cool looking, otherworldly looking piece of machinery, where they were able to bring it out and display it for their unique audiences. And really, it was great to see different technologies employed in a way that wasn't just like someone driving a Tesla or a Ford Lightning. So that was really great. Love to highlight that. And then lastly, breaking down barriers in Alabama, where legacy fuels run strong, like diesel and gasoline. In Alabama, they were able to work with Alabama Power to provide EVSE and to their communities in these rural areas. And so I think there is a lot of community here that are eager to see change and interested, and more interested than you or I might think. It's just important that we treat them like equals and understand that they they want change, they desire it, and we just have to work at the pace of trust. So with every project, there are successes and there are also barriers and challenges. And so I was just going to highlight a few here. This came from going through the qualitative notes we took during coalition's meetings about issues that they were having and some of the successes they were having. But just to highlight a few, I think one of the things we noticed is there was high staff turnover with a lot of these like rural communities and within coalitions themselves. For example, like here at VCC, I took over a project for someone that was initially running the project before me. And so I had to reestablish relationships and partnerships with these people. But then again, with the rural communities, we noticed that there were people that were working on this project from the get-go, and then they would leave, or they would be take a leave of absence or resign, and that was difficult when you're trying to establish a long-term relationship with someone. Something like I said with data collection and management, a lot of these rural fleets don't have or didn't have a lot of like the telematics that a lot of urban fleets might have access to and have budgets for. So that was one of the things that we noticed was a problem. And again, like some of their community priorities are not doing that. You know, some of these communities are just getting broadband for the first time, and so that just takes a back seat. You know, and so it's convincing them that this is important and trying to make them take those steps towards that. Supply chain industry management, obviously, like this project was started during COVID, and so there was a bit of a breakdown there, and that's difficult in general. And you can see here, I mentioned it. Where is it? I'm not sure where I said it, but it says in urban context. But that said, like a lot of resources are often sent to urban areas before they are sent to rural communities. And so like a lot of the OEMs were often reluctant or incapable of getting logistics to manage the delivery of like an alternative fuel vehicle to a locality that might not have compressed natural gas or EV chargers available. And then lastly, I think procurement and funding, that's a problem across the board, whether you're in an urban or rural area, but it's just the same in rural communities where understanding what they can and what they can't buy on their state contracts or their government contracts and fund the budgets to do so. I think what we learned is that, you know, human capacity for work and what they want to do and what they're passionate about may not always meet what they are capable of or what town is actually able to do. So yeah, I think there are human challenges to this issue, but a lot of great work that I noticed from all these coalitions that were able to be a part of this. And lastly, I want to leave off with is the resource guide, and this is available online. This is a compilation of all the resources that we found throughout the project. And this ranges from like I said, like telematics, applications to alternative fuel data center and how they can figure out what fuels stations are in their area, to resources from people like PERC, who are going to present later, and or total cost of ownership calculators for their fleets and what they are looking for. So yeah, I mean, I just want to say thank you so much for everyone and for all the good work you guys do. It's been so interesting and so eye-opening. I grew up in rural Virginia, and so it's easy to think you know so much because you live in a rural area, but I really was able to glean a lot of information from this, and I hope there's a lot of use of the rural playbook, both the PDF and the webpage version. If you guys have any questions about this and uh, want to give me some feedback, my email is here, and this QR code will take you directly to the webpage on TEP's website. And I just want to say thank you again for everybody for being here. And with that, I will pass it over to Frank.
Hey, thank you, Greg. If you have seen a utility bucket truck or telecom bucket truck, most likely you've seen an Altec truck. When Philip Reedmeyer and Mark Bentley reached out to us to ask us to be included in this grant, we couldn't have been more thrilled because we see and hear the challenges that rural communities or rural fleets face daily related to fleet electrification. It can range from limited charging infrastructure. It can also include the increased price points for this type of electrification technology. Not only that, the range of work applications are different in rural communities than we see here in Birmingham, Alabama, or some of these larger cities. And then also with some of that awareness or charging infrastructure not being available, electrification not being as prominent in rural fleets, the awareness is not there also. So we couldn't have been more thrilled to be a part of this and help the rural fleets help overcome or be aware how to overcome some of these challenges. So a utility bucket truck is a different electrification application than what we typically think of. Your normal utility lineman that you see driving the utility bucket truck, they leave the garage in the morning, they pull up to the utility pole, they put the truck in park, and they leave it running for 4 to 6 hours. They do that because they have to power the aerial or the bucket, the cab comfort AC, and job site tools. So it is running a lot of, they spend obviously their time working at the line at the utility pole, and that can idle up to 4 to 6 hours a day. That 4 to 6 hours a day translates into 33 miles of engine wear. That's a big one for these rural fleets and expenses. Not only that, every hour is 22.4 pounds of CO2 and 1.5 fuel gallons fuel burn rate, which it's expensive as gas has been lately. That can add up quick. With the job site fleet electrification solution, and I'm with Altec, but there's a lot of good job site electrification technologies out there. Rather than pulling up to the job site, putting it in park, and letting it run for 4 to 6 hours, the operator or lineman pulls up to the job site, puts the truck in park, and when he puts it in park, the diesel engine shuts down and the electrification technology takes over. And it takes over for the 4 to 6 hours a day, eliminating those metrics I shared on the right. So for those numbers, those metrics I shared, for one asset, it might not be significant, might not catch everybody's attention. But a size of a rural fleet, they can range, but let's say on average around 30 assets in their fleet. You extrapolate those metrics that I shared, and just for idling 4 hours a day, we'd see a lot higher than that. It translates across that 30 asset fleet to over million miles of engine wear, which reduces the life of the vehicle. It has over 700,000 pounds of CO2 emissions and close to $200,000 in fuel costs. And those are real numbers that we track and report related to our job site anti-idle technology. I'm not trying to push the Altec or our metrics. These are our lifetime metrics. But what I want to emphasize is that rural fleets have diverse fleets and diverse work applications. The solutions that they want to focus on are technologies that address diverse work applications and target work applications that position this technology to be able to drive those metrics I shared. So we really took a two-pronged approach, and we worked closely with Alabama Clean Cities in the very beginning. The first focus was education awareness, and that was collaborating have Clean Cities, but it was a lot with Alabama Clean Cities, and we worked with several others, obviously, that you see there, where we would support regional meetings. But not only that, we would also support the annual nationwide meetings, whether it's NTA, Utility Expo, and we would spend a lot of time with the rural fleets there, also the Clean Cities programs, and get a lot of airtime with the rural fleets to really create and drive this awareness. We wanted to take that awareness to the next step, to the application and the customer's fleets. So we're fortunate at Altec where we are able to provide customers GEMS demos where they can use for 3 to 6 up to 2 months to get comfortable with the technology, to see it's not intimidating, and for them to actually hear their feedback and how once they're done with once they've completed the demo and see the metrics that they've realized, it's enlightening to hear their response and compare it to a diesel. Everybody loves a diesel truck. They've been operating it forever. It works. But particularly the lineman operators, I mentioned the benefits from an emissions perspective, from a fuel savings perspective, from an engine maintenance perspective. But the operators, what you hear from them is they want a quiet job site. So EV or electric energy is quiet. So when they're at the job site, they need situational awareness, or they need to be talking among themselves, and they can achieve this with battery powered technology. I mentioned the live demos. Again, we wanted to track and report the metrics. It's easy for us to say what we think the fleets are doing and how they're performing. When they're able to see quantitative metrics, it has a much stronger impact on the adoption of this type of technology. So results matter. I could speak to it all day long, but this is a fleet out of Ohio, rural fleet. They participated in a jumps demo. Over that period, they realized over 336 job site anti-line hours. That translates into a little over 400 gallons of fuel savings, or gallons saved, I'm sorry, and you translate that into fuel savings for a diesel, that's translates into a little over $1,500 in fuel savings. And then the focus is removing those emissions. They avoided over 7,500 emissions avoided. Again, we could offer these demos, create the awareness, but for them to see the actual results, it has a significant impact on this type of technology. And not only that, I mentioned the pricing earlier can be a challenge. With this type of technology and them being compliant and driving these kind of numbers, you can see a payback on the initial investment within about 3 to 4 years. And not only that, you have multiple opportunities to charge the truck, whether it's plug-in charging or where they're charging between driving between job sites. That's putting let's say dirty energy from the diesel truck back into the battery and converting it in clean energy. So again, our focus was on promoting cost-effective solutions. I mentioned have awareness of the challenges that rural fleets face. A cost-effective solution, though, that meets their work applications, doesn't limit performance, but also drives the metrics that I shared. I've really highlighted the tracking and analyze data. I can't emphasize that enough. But also, we collaborate closely with the Clean Cities programs and whether it was the regional meetings or during customer demos or just meeting the customer's fleet garage. That I know we were having this meeting today, but the playbook, I don't think it stops here. The playbook is something I know Altec will really take advantage of and share with our customers to continue this education and awareness. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Frank. Greatly appreciate it. And yes, to your previous point, the playbook does not end here. It won't end with this webinar. We definitely want to make sure that it is a solution for fleet managers across the country. And with that, I'll turn it over to Joel from PERC.
Well, hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I am Joel Studheit. I am the Senior Manager of Autogas Business Development for Propane Education Research Council. And thank you for this opportunity to present to you today. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to talk about propane-powered fleets and what it takes for the infrastructure to start off. Next slide, please. So why is propane right for your fleet in the rural communities? Well, I think one of the things, first of all, what propane does, it provides a clean energy source compared to diesel or gasoline. It has lower NOx, fewer carbon emissions, and lower greenhouse gas. There's very little particulate matter that comes out of the tailpipe. You know, we tend to measure things out of the tailpipe. We can't say there's no particulate matter that comes out, but it's so clean it's hard to find. Also, propane is non-toxic. It is a very low lying gas, so it settles to the ground, and it doesn't contaminate the soil or water. Propane carbon intensity for is 30 to 79 grams, and then if you talk about renewable propane, that's even lower than that. So those are a couple different things to look at. The other side of it is domestically produced. We produce about 30 billion gallons of propane a year. However, in the United States, we only use about 11 gallons, or 11 billion gallons, and then we export the rest to other parts of the world. Then the infrastructure is cost effective compared to maybe like electrification, for large fleets, and then it's reliable to store, and it doesn't degrade. So, and it's also grid independent. So it doesn't take, there are solutions there that power is not needed to be able to use that propane. So the infrastructure, I was talking about having a greater cost savings compared to other fuel sources. So many times you're going to work with your propane provider to help set that system up. And a lot of times, if you are signing a long-term contract with them, that system's going to cost you almost no money, except for maybe some site prep and with that. You can use both on-site stations, which is on your own property, or maybe even a public station. So either way, it is easy to gain access to that. Next slide, please. So we talked about a little bit of that infrastructure setup. I talked about a standard station, a private station. That station is up to 3 1,000-gallon tanks, and you can serve up to about 50 vehicles on that. And you could either buy the infrastructure yourself, or you can rent the infrastructure in that long-term contract with your provider. One thing about the infrastructure, it is scalable. So you can start with a small 1,000-gallon tank, one dispenser, to be able to fuel your vehicles. Then you can go up from there. You can get up to an 18,000-gallon tank, or even bigger than that. And when you get those bigger tanks, your fueling prices come down, which help lower your cost of ownership and your returns on investment. So there are some options there. So if you have problems with getting power to that site prep, or you need some off-grid fueling options, there are solutions for that also. So you can use an off-grid system that is on like a skid trailer, and it is ran by a propane generator, so you can fuel easily that way. And your infrastructure is going to be built to your needs, working with your propane provider. So I talked about the infrastructure, and now I want to talk about the roadmap to your adoption. So many of you are probably very aware of the most common thing out there that you see that's propane powered is a propane school bus. And then there's also paratransits also are a large side of that, and especially in the rural communities. One thing about propane, propane autogas, you don't lose power with that. You don't lose the performance, and it's also a longer range compared to electrification. So, school buses, they tend to do stop and go or long road trips. Same thing with paratransit, where they have that high idle time. And so it's a great option in the rural communities to be able to adopt that vehicle option in your fleets. So one of the things that I want to talk about is to how do you get started, to be able to adopt autogas into your fleet. One, I think you can work with your clean cities to find incentives and grants and rebates for that will help you with that conversion. And the next step is to identify, do you want to go to a dedicated fuel system or a converted, which is like a biofuel system? Both are great. Both have that option of with propane. The dedicated system, it's going to be a sole vehicle that is straight propane. With a biofuel, you're going to have an extended range. So that is a kit that is put onto the vehicle, and it will just extend the range. You won't know that you're using propane or gasoline because of the performance. And then what it does is if you ran out of propane, it would just move right over to the gasoline side, and then until you can get back to your fleet. Either system works well because you're going to bring them back to a base to refill those, or use that public station that may be in your area. So you definitely have to work with your provider to help determine your on-field fueling needs. You'll need to look at evaluating either to purchase or lease your equipment for that infrastructure. And that's up to you. The upfront cost in most of this is going to be your site prep, and that site prep can be a low cost to you. But if you're buying the equipment and the site prep, you're going to see more dollars in that. But most people, what they do is they take and they will tie that lease into their contract instead of purchasing it, because that way, if you need to scale it up, the more propane vehicles you have, you're able to take and build bigger tanks or add more tanks for more gallonage. And then also you want to work with your provider to train your technicians. Who's working on your vehicles, your mechanics? There are systems out there or companies out there that provide this, like Roush Cleantech or Alliance Autogas. They will give that training to your technicians. And then also you want to train your drivers on safe handling when fueling. One of the things is once you start moving to that implementation, you want to check your return on investment, monitor those fuel consumptions, look at your savings and your maintenance costs. What you will see is if you compare the use of propane versus the diesel, you're going to see a better return on your propane cost per mile. Normally you see about 20 or 30 cents a mile, which is pretty great. So you get that cost savings there. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I want to share a little bit about how propane is used in agriculture. So just a case, next slide, please. Here's a case study of a dairy down in Florida. They milk about a little over 3,300 cows per year, and then they irrigate over 2,000 acres. And they had a challenge when they were putting in their diesel generator pumps for irrigation, that tier 3. They were having some issues with those. And so what they did is they ended up looking at doing some propane pumps to take and see how they could fix that issue. Next slide, please. So they were able to change that, and the success out of that whole story is they saw a lower cost with the propane with the three-tiered diesel engines. They saved about $10 per hour savings in fuel costs, and they also cut things in half compared to diesel. You know, and they also increased the convenience with the automatic fuel delivery. So they were never out of fuel. Okay. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Joel. Greatly appreciate that. And thank you again, everyone, for attending today. I want to flag that I don't believe I saw any questions in the chat, but if there are any questions, feel free to share them now. We have the benefit of Greg, Frank, and Joel's availability. I also do want to flag that this is just the first in a series of webinars. The next steps will be each of the individual coalition partners that we cited before and maybe exist here at the end. Do we have a final slide or?
Yeah.
Will be hosting their own coalition webinars to review the process, the initiative, the project, and the work that they did to help advance clean fuel infrastructure in rural communities. So you have those to look forward to as well. If you're a representative of one of those coalitions here on this webinar, thank you in advance for that future webinar to come, but also thank you in retrospect for the great work that you've done to advance this work and to help us on this project.
Yeah, I wanted to say again, thank you all so much for coming here, and I appreciate all the hard work people have done in the rural communities here across the U.S. Yeah, and if you guys have any questions about it, I would love to hear them. This playbook was not developed in a vacuum. We had a lot of help, but having more feedback from other coalitions across the U.S. would be great, especially as you are hosting your own webinars coming up over the next few months. If you guys do need help going through any of that kind of stuff, please let me know, and I would happily hop on a call with you and discuss more. I saw a question come in.
Question about telematics, Greg. Many rural communities not having easy access to telematics, funding existing systems, etc. Any advice on problem solving that challenge with them?
Yeah, so what we did is we found a free telematics tracking sheet and kind of adapted it for rural communities and have shared that with them for free. But then also there are a few telematics companies that offer discounted software for municipalities or nonprofits. So that's something else we included in there. As it comes for funding or existing systems, like didn't really find much of that throughout this program or in any of my research. Doesn't mean they don't exist, but I did not find any. So that's about the extent of our telematics.
However, it sounds like this might be a good opportunity for some thought partnership. So maybe a future conversation around what are some ways to expand on existing resources. That link that we provided is to the homepage or the landing page on TEP's website, in which both the replication playbook and the resource guide are available as downloadable PDFs. And to Frank's earlier point, as well as what Greg has been talking about, we don't want the replication playbook to end. This is not a terminus point for the project, for the initiative. The replication playbook is intended for fleet managers, to implement and to help expand infrastructure and to explore the process that these coalitions have undertaken. And we want to exist as an ongoing resource. And I know that Greg just mentioned if anyone wants to reach out to him and have a conversation around their own state-based webinars around the project. But beyond the scope of just those webinars themselves, rural communities are a thriving opportunity. They're a thriving space, as Frank mentioned about the particular challenges that they face. We want to be sure that we are creating a community of learning and practice around this work. So if there are ongoing questions, if there are challenges that are either novel or well established, please feel free to flag them for Greg and myself and the team here. We want to be in a position to support the work that you're doing beyond today.
Looks
And
like we have another question there too.
yeah,
From
Joel.
Peggy. Yeah, to Joel.
Peggy, there is renewable propane in the Northeast. I just needed to kind of know where you are. And actually, if you want to uh, send me your information, I can get together with you on that, with that uh, information.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, I just following up also what Steven said is the goal is that with the website, the web page, and the PDF playbook is that we can continue to engage with rural communities across our own states, across the U.S. And basically hand this to them, this resource guide and this playbook of how they can recreate and understand their own needs without a direct coalition support. It's something that we can just hand them and let them walk through it themselves and then take a learning experience themselves.
So be sure to flag Alan's comment in the chat as well. And I'm going to share my own email in chat. So if anyone wants to continue a conversation from today's presentation, if anyone would like to reach out who wants to not simply continue a conversation, but would specifically like additional resources or to discuss some challenges that are faced by rural communities, feel free to reach out, shoot me an email, and I'll make sure to connect with you. Right. Well, we'll put out a last call for additional questions. And if we don't have any come in, then we can give you an early release from your time with us. And again, just want to say thank you to everyone who has been part of the project. A special thank you to Greg, Ian, Frank, and Joel for joining me on this panel. Shout out to Alan for his speedy clicking with the links for the guidebook and the resource, or for the playbook and the resource guide. And also before leaving, just want to give a shout out to both Ken and Ann Brown, the team at KBSC Strategies, and Rachel Allenberger for the great work that they did in the initial stewardship of this project and turning over something that was very much ready-made and just needed that final push to see it through to the end. Very much appreciate their tireless work around not just DCR USA, but the broader environment of clean energy, clean transportation. So thank you all very much again. And I know I'm looking forward to your state coalition webinars. And if you're here from a state coalition or you're here as an industry partner, I hope that you're looking forward to them as well and look forward to seeing you on them in the coming months.